can we take matter seriously if we've got to go through a third party?
If I'm paying tens to hundreds of thousands of dollars for an integrated system, do I want a wall wart or do I want an integrated lighting solution that is hidden away from everybody else and I don't have to see a wire or a plug or anything like that? So I don't think that it has anything to do with matter. I think it has to do with what a Crestron installation means to the average consumer.
So it really doesn't matter.
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 So it really doesn't matter. So it really doesn't matter.
So it really doesn't matter.
So it really doesn't matter.
On this episode of ResiWeek, we talk CEDIA on the Hill, Lutron's tiny house, and matter with Crestron. All this and more on this episode of ResiWeek. This is ResiWeek, episode 423, Tiny Houses. Welcome to this episode of ResiWeek. This is your weekly roundup of all the latest news and stories for the residential AV industry. I'm your host, Matt D. Scott for AVNation.tv, and this week I'm pleased to be joined by two of my good friends. First, we have Katye McGregor-Bennett. She's the president of KMB Communications. How you doing, Katie?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on again.
Thank you for being here. Then we've got Avi Rosenthal. He's a partner at Bluesalve. How you doing, Avi?
I'm doing well. And Matt, so how's the weather up north? No, I wouldn't ask you that.
Up. I'm bemoaning the end of my ski season.
There you go.
Talk about it. Also, because I can't golf yet. Once I can golf, it'll be okay. All right. Let's kick this off with a story that comes to us from Residential Systems. CEDIA advocates for integrators during the inaugural CEDIA Day on the Hill. They met with a bunch of politicians, for lack of a better term, on both sides of the aisle to discuss getting the creation of the integrator classification into the standard occupational classification system. This means a ton from a workforce standpoint as far as tax credits, tax classifications, business programs, all kinds of government potential can be kind of wrapped up if we can get this achieved. Katie, I want to start with you on this. And just before I do that, I want to applaud CEDIA as an association. I want to applaud the board, as well as a bunch of the members that showed up to this, because it was a large group, which looks fantastic when you show up like that onto the Hill to try and have your voice heard. I realize I'm saying this as a Canadian who lives in Canada. So take that with a grain of salt. Yeah. Anyways, that being said, Katie.
In Canada.
Yeah, back in Canada. Working very hard to honestly likely explain to these politicians what it is that CEDIA is, what it is that their members do, and why the importance of trying to get integrator into that standard occupational classification system. What does it mean, A, that we've taken this first step, and what's the potential that could come out of this?
This is huge. This has been a long time coming, and CEDIA, much like you, I want to take a pause and compliment and commend the efforts by all for everything that went into getting to that day, and the continued efforts. This isn't a one and done situation, and it certainly is going to take more of those masses to show up on the Hill. And we'll take Canadians too, Matt. It's okay. If they'll let you come across the border, you can join us. Maybe we'll see. I don't know. But it's definitely worth stopping for a moment and complimenting, congratulating all of the things to CEDIA for making the effort and for being there, for everybody for showing up. It takes a village, and in this case, it's going to take a very, very large village in order for what we're trying to accomplish to really to take root. This is huge from a workforce development standpoint, which is clearly one of the biggest issues that we are going to continue to face in our industry, not just ours, but we obviously micro-focus on the things that are closest to home. And this is probably the biggest challenge that we have to face for the foreseeable future. So knowing that CEDIA as an organization, as an association, is behind all of us and, marching to the Hill to try to make sure that the need is known, I think is huge. We need to, all of us as individuals and as business owners, we need to continue in this quest because again, this isn't a one and done situation. Yeah. So, I encourage everybody to get involved at the local level and continue to be an advocate, be a voice, but be representative of the positive side of everything that we can do. And, I think that's just sort of a general caution from the communicator here. We've got a very large audience, and we have a very powerful voice. We need to use it to get what we need, and we get it going faster. If we don't, it's the future of our industry will potentially just continue to shrink, and that's a very, very sad story. If there's something we could be doing today to turn that, we should all be taking note. So.
All right, Avi, I would like to think that this is not that hard of a goal to achieve, although it's the government. So we're going to agree that this is going to be quite a large hill to climb.
Yes.
If we are able to get the integrator classification into the SOC, what does that actually mean? What are the tangible benefits of that?
So the tangible benefits are things that integration companies have been trying to take advantage of for many years. For instance, when veterans leave service, when they go from active duty to becoming veterans, if we're an SOC, it means that we can actually give training and get training funded by the federal government through federal programs that will enable these veterans to be retrained or to utilize the training that they learned in the military and leverage it for integration projects. A lot of these people are coming out with things like networking and all kinds of other technical project jobs, but not necessarily how to do them within a high-end residence or a commercial environment. They're doing networking and things as it pertains to their training within the military. Being part of those veterans programs gives us a direct avenue of labor force, of workforce, into the integration industry. It also gets us grants for things like trade schools and other things that the other trades, the plumbers, the electricians, the craftsmen get to take advantage of today because they are on this list. And because integrators are not, we don't get those advantages. And so we've been talking about this for a very long time. Katie is absolutely right. This is a long poll. I was trying to look up when the last time a classification was added to this. It was like decades ago. It is not an easy thing to add a classification to this list because of all of the other classifications that are already there. As you would imagine, the electricians and the plumbers and everybody else who's already on this list are going to look at us sort of as competition. There's only a certain number of folks that are willing to do these kinds of jobs. And if we, being our industry, train them and grab them up, then they're not electricians and plumbers and other things. Mm-hmm. We are not a unionized workforce. We have never been a unionized workforce. And so the unions will have a say as to whether or not this gets added into this list and not. So I think it's important that we continue the advocacy of it. I applaud CEDIA and their efforts. I'm involved with the Consumer Technology Association as well as CEDIA, and we've always advocated for things like trade policy. It has been years since we've worked on workforce development. And I would gather that, Mr. Shapiro is looking around and seeing what Mr. Friedman has done. And it's like, I wonder if there's a way that we can do this together. There is definitely an opportunity here to lift the integration marketplace into that focus. If you remember, during the pandemic, network engineers were deemed essential workers. Yeah. We were classified as essential to the day-to-day, the same way that electricians and other workers were classified. That was really the first step. That's sort of the wedge under the door to be able to get us to be classified as on this list, on the SOC list, so that we can get things like grants. A report just came out this week. There are 550,000 plumbers leaving their industry, and it's leaving a vacuum of 550,000 people who are in the plumbing industry that aren't going to be anymore. There are 2 million truckers potentially that, when automated trucking are no longer going to be behind the wheel of a truck. You're talking about a massive shift in understanding and a massive shift in training that has to happen. Having the federal government standing behind us when we're trying to train integrators is a huge step to the legitimacy and to the understanding of what we do on a daily basis.
Yeah, it's insane, especially when you start looking at how many workers are retiring,
Yeah.
or aging out.
Aging
right?
out.
It's not that that's what the story is about, but that is a massive factor of any story that deals in essentially the construction industry. It's
No.
we have one of the few industries that's actually growing in that vein and replacing workers that are retiring. All right, let's jump over to a different topic. This comes to us from CE Pro. Lutron demos their luxury experience app, as well as outfits a tiny house at KBIS 2024 in lovely Las Vegas, showcasing the Lutron control system, lighting control system, as well as its Ketra brand, showing the effects and impacts of lights and shades in the aesthetic of a house. Avi, let me start with you on this. I love this story from two phases. One, of all the places to put Ketra, a tiny house is never where I thought it would go.
No.
Other than the fact it's a demo, so it makes sense. Calm down, people. It's funny. Laugh at it. It's good.
It is funny.
It's hilarious.
It is.
300 square feet, but we got 27 Ketra lights. The bigger aspect of this story is the fact that by doing this, they were able to obviously walk and demo
Yes.
very effectively their products to a captive audience that was going to obviously be very interested in this. Can we understate the importance of doing something like this for that community, right? Not just something on the show floor that they could walk by, but, hey, you got to come outside and see this cool tiny house.
And I don't think you can understate it. And I'm going to give an example from my own history. So when I was an integrator 1,000 years ago, I was the very first IBM home director integrator in the country. I know I'm going to date myself here, but I'm doing it for a reason. At the time, the thing back then that everybody laughed at, and I'm going to get some giggles because I know both of you were around. At the time, the big deal was outfitting buses. Remember when we used to outfit a 45-foot coach bus, and we would make the coach bus have all of the technology in it. I was lucky enough, the IBM Home Director bus, which was actually built in Canada. Thank you, Canada.
You're welcome.
Yes. Was stationed, was housed in South Florida where my integration firm was. And so we had free reign of this thing when it was not traveling around the countryside. We closed more business by being able to bring this bus to the builder and show them in a real world setting, because of course inside the bus it looked like a bedroom and a living room. And we were able to show them in a real world setting exactly what smart home was. Now, this was the late 90s, early 2000s. This was before people even understood what we were really talking about. But when you sat them down in that chair and you turned on the video and you showed them the audio, or you reversed that, you turned on the audio and showed them the video, and you explained to them what smart lighting was about, and you showed them what controlled thermostats were, and you talked about energy management, showing it to them in a space that made sense to them, that they were comfortable with, made a much bigger impression than showing them a PowerPoint or pulling out an app on a phone, or even bringing them to a showroom, because again, a showroom is sort of like a mock, whereas this was in their own environment. Imagine, if you would, this house is actually able to be transported on the back of a truck. How cool would it be if the people who developed it put it on the back of a trailer and took it around the countryside? The strength of being able to understand what Ketra represents in their circadian lighting and the way that circadian lighting changes your mood and your feeling cannot be understated. Jasco has got an incredible circadian lighting demo. They were doing it in a booth. It loses something when you show it in a booth versus when you show it in a true environment. And I think integrators to this day, I mean, it is decades we've been talking about this, but they're still missing the boat when it comes to how to demonstrate this stuff in an effective manner. You always have to remember that the people we're showing this to are not technologists. They're people. Yeah. They're people who live in their homes every day, and they live every day without these things and don't realize that living without them is hindering them. They see their lives as very nice. I live in a comfortable home. The heat comes on, the air conditioning comes on, there's light in the room, no big deal. Until you show them the benefits and how it affects your mood, how it affects your daily life, it's really hard for people to understand it.
Yeah, that's a great point. All right, Katie, is there a way that dealers, integrators can effectively kind of steal from this a little bit, right? Because, and we laughed kind of pre-show as we were leading into this, because we flip-flop every 2 years. It's get rid of your showrooms. Nobody needs a showroom. Nobody wants to come to a showroom. To the reverse of, you got to get a showroom. You got to be able to demo this stuff. How the heck is someone going to buy it without a demo? What is the balance here? Because a lot of this stuff, yes, you really want to show off to fully understand, experience, and get excited about spending money on it. On the flip side, you're also going to likely get asked to demo, an $800 TV that you just don't care about. How do you balance?
Okay, well, that's you. And I think people are just asking you for demos of weird and random things. And we're going to need to talk about that on a whole nother episode because apparently, and you guys, I don't know if you heard this on the listening side, Mitch, you can just edit this out, but Matt's got I'll demo anything in your house. Just name your price.
I will not.
I didn't know that was a thing. Avi, I was surprised, as I'm sure you were. Right?
I was very surprised.
Wow.
I think honestly what this does is puts a very fine point on the power of a very effective demo. And we were kind of joking about this before we actually started to record, but I mean, the art of the demo is something that we've talked about for decades in the channel. And I think that part of that has gotten lost. At the same time, we've got a consumer audience that doesn't have has a appreciation, for lack of a better word, for some of the price points that technologies in our channel can command. When you put those two things together, what we really have is a much bigger issue, which is our industry's ability to demo expensive products is really, really, really limited. And so when you start to look at how can we get the right technology demo in front of the right person at the right time, how do we do that? And you're right, we flip-flopped on showrooms and experience centers, and we just like integrators, what do we call these spaces? Or is it an experience center? Is it a design center? Is it a showroom? Is it all the things.
All the things.
But I think that those that are having the most success, if we were to kind of take a closer look, it's the ones that are closest to the home experience that are having the greatest success in selling an enhanced home experience.
Yep.
You've got Gordon Van Zyden's Smart Home in Cupertino. You've got Jesse Silva and these tiny homes that have been out there now for a couple of years. We need more of them. We've got integrators that are doing really great things with experience centers. You've got reps now who are carrying the burden of designing, building, and outfitting experience centers so that dealers, integrators, their own brands have somewhere to show their own products to their own competition. I mean, there is such a broad need for it that I think that it's when we start to see where there are demos that are really hitting home, it's when it's relevant and relatable to the person that you're trying to sell things to. So these tiny homes, it's funny that you mentioned that about Ketra, but honestly, it can be one Ketra fixture in one room of a house that's thoroughly relatable to that person.
Right.
You take them through that 7-minute Ketra demo, you have provided them an experience that they're never going to get again, and they're not going to understand why they feel different when they walk out of that room.
Mm-hmm.
And that, I think, is really the power of technology. And the demo, when done right, it cannot be challenged. Then we have to be able to talk about the price point, and that's the conversation for another day. But that's the second biggest crisis that we have in our industry, and I'll just say it right now on record, is we are not able to sell expensive products. If we cannot start to figure that out, we've got a much bigger problem facing us than just what is this tiny house filled with Ketra doing.
I love a good tiny house. I don't live in one. I love a good tiny house.
It's cool though.
Yeah, no,
it's cool though. It is cool. And I'll tell you that I've sat next to designers, design build professionals who've been through that tiny house, and we've talked to them as an industry. We've talked to them about Ketra, and they certainly know lighting design. But when they get the demo from our side of the fence and they actually experience it, it really does change.
Yeah, it resonates.
Change the whole perspective.
It does.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, that's a great point. All right, let's wrap this up with our last story of the day. This comes to us from Residential Tech Today, integrating Matter-compatible devices with a Crestron smart home. Go read this overview by Jay Basin. He covers, obviously, initially what Matter is, if you are unaware, also kind of what Crestron is, which, again, if you're unaware, go for it. You can learn something. But essentially, he goes through a variety of hubs that allow you to integrate Matter devices, again, into your Crestron system, which is cool. We'll start it with that. We'll be positive for a second. My question out of this, stop laughing, Avi. Come on. You're going to get me in so much trouble. My question out of this is, obviously, yes, you can do this. You can integrate technically anything as long as you have something to allow it to integrate. Is the holdback with Matter the fact that we need a third-party hub? Can we, as a integration community, can we take Matter seriously if we've got to go through a third party with, again, in this case, Crestron, who's kind of, one of the big boys in the room? If you can't integrate directly with Matter devices, does it really warrant a true look?
Jay does a phenomenal job in his article describing the ways that this can be done and describing the various products that it works with and the ones that it doesn't. And my hat's off to him for the science project, right? Because really that's essentially what it is. It's a science project. And Jay does a really great job of describing not only why he's doing it, but how he's doing it. I'm going to question whether or not an integrator would do this, because in my opinion, the integrators are not using plug-in modules in a Crestron level installation, right? A plug-in module is a great feature. I've designed them. I've sold them. I've advocated for them. I have no issue at all with a plug-in module. But if I'm paying tens to hundreds of thousands of dollars for an integrated system, do I want a wall wart, or do I want an integrated lighting solution that is hidden away from everybody else and I don't have to see a wire or a plug or anything like that? So I don't think that it has anything to do with Matter. I think it has to do with what a Crestron installation means to the average consumer, right? If they're going and they're buying stuff on the onlines or in the big boxes, they're doing it themselves. And a plug-in module is a great solution to be able to achieve lighting control in a simple way. If I'm paying somebody tens to hundreds of thousands of dollars to do this for me, I'm hoping that they're not going to the onlines and to the big boxes and buying stuff off the shelf and just plugging it in and programming it, right? It's a more meaningful installation. It's a more meaningful application. And so no degradation whatsoever, no judgment whatsoever to Matter, no judgment whatsoever to Jay, because I think he wrote a phenomenal article and I would love to try it. If I had a Crestron processor in my house, I would, because I'm a geek and this is what I like to do. But I'm not sure the average consumer would appreciate, opening the closet of this multi-$100,000 installation and seeing a $39 box that they can buy on the onlines. So I think it's just, it's cool that Jay can prove the openness and the connectability and the flexibility of Crestron, because let's face it, just a few years ago, it wasn't able to do that, right? Crestron was a completely walled garden. It didn't have on-ramps. There was no way to implement third-party stuff. And my hat's off to Crestron for being able to develop an open platform standard that is relatable and is achievable and is flexible enough to get this done. Whether or not the average integrator is going to do it, I don't think so.
Katie, is there a balance between being able to integrate all the things, right? I've got a real good friend in the industry, and he's the geek level that would, if you tell him he can't do it, he's going to try and find a way to make it happen, and he likely will. But is there a balance between making something work because you can versus that walled garden of this is all tested, this all works, we're not using some random $5 part off Alibaba to make it work, even if it does work? What's the balance?
No, I think there's a few things, and personally professionally, I'm really big on just because you can doesn't mean you should. And so I think there's a little bit of that comes into play in this, but to be true, custom installation, the channel wouldn't be here if people like your friend did not have such a deep desire to figure it out. Don't tell me it can't be done. I'll tell you if it can't be done, right? Mm-hmm. We wouldn't be here today talking about all of these fascinating things if that drive didn't exist many years ago. And it will continue. And so, I think just to be realistic and to put it in a proper context, that is why we're here, and what makes our industry so incredibly unique is that we've got these wizards, or the wizard mentality that exists. It's, sure, you say on paper it can't be done, but I'm going to go and I'm going to not sleep. I'm going to, Mountain Dew in my basement.
I know a guy, right?
I know a guy, and there's code, and there are groups and forums for this, and I love that. But back, obviously, to your point, and you made this before we came on, and you made it again, and I'm glad that you did, is that no customer of our channel should ever pay a price point such as they do for something, for example, as Crestron, open up the cabinet and see a little hub that can be price shopped everywhere else at a significantly lower price. That is a problem for all of us. That is a huge problem for all of us. That essentially is the death knell for our industry. So if that becomes the standard by which our industry is judged, and now you've got an audience that's used to double checking our homework, so to speak, in such a way as, no, thank you. No, thank you. I don't want any part of that. And I don't think that's why we're here having this conversation today either. We're looking for ways to continue to grow our industry, not confine, constrain, and choke it out. And I think that's very scary. It's a very scary scenario.
There are integrators out there that are very successful and have very successful businesses dealing with off-the-shelf product and helping customers install them, helping them integrate them, maintaining them, configuring them, being that concierge for them, and not installing Crestron and Control4 and other software platforms. And it's a completely valid business model, and it's a completely valid way of representing technology to your customers and being part of their technology journey and helping them through their homes. So it's not to say that the article that was written is not relevant, because there are people out there that utilize these quote unquote off-the-shelf products that enable easy integration for some of these integrators out there. It's when you get into these really high level complex installations, and then you're using off-the-shelf product to either cut a corner or do something that can be done, even though it shouldn't be done. Because I'm not aware today of anything that's available in the Matter ecosystem that's not available already in the Crestron ecosystem. So it's not like anything, it's not an expansion of the ecosystem, unlike some of the other RF standards that are out there that Jay had originally written about. There are product in the Z-Wave and Zigbee ecosystems that are not available in Crestron. And so the original article was, if I need a sensor, and Crestron doesn't make every sensor in everything in CrestNet, right? There are sensors out there. And so his original article was all about, how do I get that water sensor? How do I achieve that connectivity with something that's not available in the core competency of Crestron to be able to expand my installations? Very valid, very viable. But I think when you get into consumer level product solving integrator level questions, that's where the system breaks down pretty quickly.
Well, and again, to that point, right? Like, I don't want to sound like I'm disparaging anything that's off the rack, anything that, you pick up from Amazon that you need. I get it. Heck, we had an entire category built off the Alexa voice control pod that was arguably a very cheap component off the shelf from Amazon. And we built an entire platform based off of it. It's that concept of, to your point, why are we jerry-rigging something that we don't need to jerry-rig for maybe anything other than a minor cost savings or because we can, right? It's the same reason. And if you think about it, you'll know exactly who I'm talking about. If you source your HDMI cables from that big company online that sells them, that exhibits at our show. I get it. But when you are selling that, hey, I'm going to drop a line to your TV and it's going to cost, $500, and you pull out a box that has that cable, and that cable sells for $22. How are you justifying your $500 markup? I'm not getting into the quality of said cable and whether it competes or doesn't. Don't know, don't care. But there's a reason we buy, or try to use protected lines and things like that aren't available everywhere, because it allows you to specify stuff. It's the same reason plumbers have entire lines of product that you will never find at a Home Depot. It's for this reason. Pay attention. All right. We are going to wrap it there before I get a bunch of hate mail from that little company that sells wire that y'all know about. And please do. I really don't care. Thank you both for joining us. It's been a pleasure. Katie, if people want to connect with you, learn more about KMB Communications, where can they do that?
Oh, they can search the sphere for Katye McGregor-Bennett or KMB Communications. We're the one with the mountain as our logo. You'll find us if you search for us.
Excellent. Thank you, my friend. Avi, if people want to connect with you, learn more about Bluesalve, how can they do that?
The best way to find us is at our website, www.bluesalve.com. Or you can find us on LinkedIn, and we even have a Facebook page now. They've been very excited. I don't know. My marketing folks are all excited about our Facebook page.
I'm going to go like it just for that. All right. Thank you so much again for joining us. If you'd like to connect with me, you can find me at Matt D. Scott on Twitter, X, and pretty much every other social platform. But more importantly, please visit AVNation.tv, where you'll find this show as well as a wide variety of other shows with all the verticals that we cover. When you visit the website, please take a moment to check out our supporters. We are extremely thankful for their support and ask that you check them out as well. Thanks again for watching. That's all the time we have for this episode of ResiWeek,
the network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
This is AV.
This
is AV Nation.
This is AV Nation.